morning, students. Today, the topic which we are going to discuss is inductive deductive method. The learning objectives of today's topic are meaning of inductive deductive method means the students will be able to understand the meaning of inductive deductive method. Concept of inductive deductive method, they will be able to know the concept of inductive deductive method. Features of inductive deductive method. What are the different features of inductive deductive method? Procedure of inductive deductive method. Meaning, the inductive method of teaching means that the teacher present the rule through situations. Means it's a method of teaching. It's a way of teaching that this method can be used by the teacher to teach the students. In that, the teacher presents the rules before the student. It can be through situations and sentences, and thus guided practice. And then the students will be guided by the teacher through the practice sessions. Then the learners do free practice. After that, the teacher make the learner free to practice on those rules. After that, the teacher lets the rule form from the learners by themselves, and after that, the teacher lets the rule by themselves. An inductive approach to teaching language starts with example. Now, it's a teaching language starts with examples and ask learner to find rules, and in that the teacher will first present the students the example and ask the students or the learners to find the rule on the basis of the examples. It can be compared with a deductive approach, means we can compare a deductive approach with an inductive approach in that way that the deductive approach that starts by giving learners rules, then examples, then practice. Now, in deductive approach, the teacher first present the learners the rules and then give examples related to it, and then the teacher will ask the students to start doing the practice. Now, definition from the Oxford English Dictionary: to induce means to drive by reasoning, to lead to something as a conclusion or inference, to suggest or imply. Now, what the induction means or defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, and it's include to drive by reasoning, that to come by a reason, to lead to something, we lead to something as a conclusion, we will come to a conclusion or inferences, to suggest or imply an induction as the process of inferring a general law or principle from observation of particular instances. Now, abduction, another version is the abdical, pulling together of a number of separate facts, means in that number of separate facts will be placed together or to put together particulars, etc., especially for the purpose of proving a general statement. Two very distinct and opposing instructional approaches are inductive and deductive, but we have seen that inductive and deductive are the two different, distinct, and opposite instructional approach that will be used by the teacher to teach the students. Both approaches can offer certain advantages, means inductive and deductive approach both have certain advantages, but the biggest difference is the role of the teacher. But the use or the giving the instruction by inductive or deductive, the biggest role is that of a teacher. In a deductive classroom, the teacher conducts lessons by introducing and explaining concept to students. Now, when we are talking about a deductive classroom where the teacher is teaching with the approach of deductive method, the teacher conducts lesson. The lesson was conducted by the teacher by introducing and explaining concepts to students. First, the teacher introduced and explained concepts to students, and then expected students to complete tasks to practice the concept. And now, It is expected from the students to complete the task, to practice the concept that they have learned. This approach is very teacher centered. So it's a deductive approach, but it's a teacher centered approach. Conversely, induction is a much more student centered approach. But when the teacher is using inductive instruction to teach the students, then we are saying that it's a more student centered approach and make use of a strategy known as noticing. Now, what is inductive instruction? In contrast with the deductive method, when we are making a comparison between inductive and deductive, inductive instruction make use of student noticing instead of explaining a given concept. They are make use of student noticing a particular concept instead of explaining. They do not uh, believe in explaining a concept. They are believing in noticing the students. Make use of noticing a given concept and following this explanation with example. Following this explanation with examples, the teacher presents students with many examples. The teacher will present in front of the students a number of examples showing how the concept is used, and they will show how the students in front of the student how this concept is being used. The intent is for students to notice by way of the example how the concept works. Using the grammar situation from above, the teacher would present the students with a variety of examples for a given concept. The teacher would present the students a variety of examples from the concept that he is going to teach for a given concept without giving any preamble about how the concept is used. They are not focusing on how that concept has to be used. They are just giving a variety of examples related to that. As students see how the concept is used, it is hoped that they will notice how the concept is to be used and determine the grammar. As a conclusion to the activity, the teacher can ask the students to explain the grammar rule as a final check that they understood the concept. The inductive teaching method or process goes from the specific to the general. When we are talking about the inductive teaching method, the process goes from specific to general, particular to general, and may be based on specific experiments or experimental learning experiences. Deductive teaching method progress from a general concept to the specific use or application. But when we are talking about the deductive teaching method, we will progress from a general concept to the specific use or application of that. This method are usually particularly in reasoning, that is logic and problem solving. Means inductive and deductive methods are particularly used in reasoning. The reason is to draw inferences appropriate to the situation, means the students will able to draw the inferences related to the situation. Inferences are classified as either deductive or inductive. For example, Ram must be either the museum or in the cafeteria. He is not in the cafeteria, therefore he must be in the museum. This is deductive reasoning. So we are given an example related to the use of deductive reasoning. Here, a situation is there that Ram can either be in the museum or it can be a cafeteria. He is not in the cafeteria. If Ram is not in the cafeteria, therefore we must come to the conclusion that he must be in the museum, and this is the deductive reasoning. The most significant difference between these forms of reasoning is that in the deductive case, the truth of the premises conditions guarantee the truth of the conclusions, whereas in the inductive case, the truth of the premises lends support to the conclusion without giving absolute assurance. Inductive arguments intended to support their conclusions only to some degree. The premises do not necessitate the conclusion. Inductive reasoning is common in science, and the concept of inductive reasoning is common in the subject of science, where data is collected, where we have to collect the data related to a particular problem or a situation, and tentative models are developed, and we have to develop a tentative models related to it to describe that thing and predict future, and on the basis of the data we can develop and models, and these models can be used to describe and predict future behavior. What will be the future behavior? Until the appearance of the anomalous data forces the model to be revised. Definition: the OED definition of to deduce is to show or hold a thing to be derived from etc. To draw as a conclusion from something known or assumed to infer. Deduction, thus, is inference by reasoning from generals to particulars, or the process of deducing from something known or assumed. Now, what is deductive instruction? A deductive approach to instruction is a more teacher-centered approach. Means when we are talking about the deductive approach or method of teaching, the instructional approach that has been used in the deductive approach, it's more a teacher-centered approach. This means that the teacher gives the students a new concept. A new concept will be presented by the teacher in front of the student, explain it. He will explain that concept, and then as the student practices using this concept, and then they will ask the student to practice the particular concept that they have learned. For example, when teaching a new grammar concept, uh, a teacher is decided that he will teach a new grammar concept to the student. The teacher will introduce the concept. For example, the teacher has decided that he will teach the noun to the students. Then, first of all, he will introduce the concept of noun to the student, explain the rules related to its use. Then, the teacher will explain the rules related to noun to the students, and finally the student will practice using the concept in a variety of different situations. Now, in the end, the teacher will practice the use of noun using the concept in a variety of different ways or situations. Teaching method can either be inductive or deductive or some combination of the two. So what they are saying, that teaching method, the way of teaching the student, can either be inductive, the teacher can teach the students with inductive process, or deductive, or the teacher can teach the students with the deductive approach, or some combination of the two, where the teacher can use both inductive or deductive approach to teach the students. Now, deduction theory. First, the teacher presents the theory before the student. On the basis of that, a hypothesis has to be formed. On the basis of the hypothesis, a tentative solutions to a problem, we will start observing the concept against the hypothesis that has been framed, and then on the basis of the observation, we will confirm whether the hypothesis has been accepted or rejected. Uh, in induction, first we will observe a concept. First we will observe the concept or a situation. Then a pattern has to be developed that in this way these things are going on. Tentative hypothesis, then we frame some hypothesis related to the observation patterns, and in the end a theory will be developed. Now, deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning works from the more general to the more specific. Means we move from general to specific. Sometimes this is formally called a top-down approach, and some formally, informally, sometimes we are calling the deductive reasoning from the top-down approach because we move from general to the more specific. We might begin with thinking up a theory about a topic of interest. We then narrow that down into more specific hypotheses that we can test. We narrow down even further when we collect observation to address the hypothesis. This ultimately leads us to be able to test the hypothesis means we can test the hypothesis whether the hypothesis has been accepted or rejected with a specific data with a specific related data to that particular situation, a confirmation or not of our original theories. Now, inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning work with other way. Uh, Inductive reasoning is different from the use of deductive reasoning, moving from specific observation to a broader generalization and theory. In deductive reasoning, we are moving from general to specific, but when we are talking about the inductive reasoning, we are moving from specific observation to broader generalization and theories. Informally, we sometimes call this a button up approach. Inductive reasoning is sometimes called as a bottom up approach. Please note that it's bottom up and not bottoms up, which is the kind of thing the waitress says to customer when he is trying to close for the night. In inductive reasoning, we began with specific observations. We are start observing the things, the specific things, and may just began to detect patterns. And after that, we will start deducting the different patterns and regularities, formulate some tentative hypothesis related to it. Then we can explore and finally end up developing some general theories or conclusions. The most significant difference between these forms of reasoning is that in the deductive case, the truth of the premises conditions guarantees the truth of the conclusion, whereas in the inductive case, the truth of the premises lends support to the conclusion without giving absolute assurance. Inductive arguments intended to support their conclusion only to some degree means inductive arguments intended to support their conclusions, they will support their conclusion but only to some degree. The premises do not necessitate the conclusion. Inductive reasoning is common in science where data is collected, where we have to collect the data and tentative models are developed, and on the basis of that collected data we will develop some tentative models are developed to describe and predict future behavior, and on the basis of that we can describe that concept and predict the future behavior until the appearance of the analysis data forces the model to be revised. Deductive reasoning is common in mathematics and logic. In deductive reasoning is more common or more commonly used in the subjects of mathematics and logic, where elaborate structure of irrefutable theorems are built up from a small set of basic axioms and rules. However, example exists where teaching by inductive methods bear fruits. Logic and problem solving are two more areas where these methods find extensive uses. Which methods? Inductive and deductive methods. The major task of logic is to establish a systematic way of deducing the logical consequences of a set of sentences. In order to accomplish this, it is necessary first to identify or characterize the logical consequences of a set of sentences. The procedure for driving conclusion, the procedure to come up with a conclusion from a set of sentences, from a different set of sentences, then need be examined to verify that all logical consequences. Only these are deducible from that set. From its very beginning, the field of logic has been occupied with arguments. Means the field of logic has been occupied with different arguments, in which certain statements, the premises, are accepted in order to support some other statements, the conclusion. If the premises are intended to provide conclusive support for conclusions, the argument is deductive one. If the premises are intended to support the conclusion only to a lesser degree, the argument is called inductive. A logically correct argument is done well, where there are some reasons, and on the basis of those reasons or the argument, if we got the result, we will term it as valid. While an acceptable inductive argument is called cogent, the notion of support is further elucidated by the observations that the truth of the premises of a valid deductive argument necessitates the truth of the conclusion. It is impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusions false, and it is impossible for the premises that it has to be true and the conclusions false. On the other hand, the truth of the premises of a congruent argument confirms only a probability of truth on its conclusion. It is possible for the premises to be true, but the conclusion is false. For example, let the premises is all teachers are scholars. We are taking the premise that all teachers are scholars. And the conclusion be there can be various conclusions on the basis of this statement. There are some scholars who are not teachers. We can predict that there are some scholars who are not teachers. Let the premises be true, then obviously means all teachers are scholars. The conclusion is false. The conclusion which we are affirming that there are some scholars who are teachers is can be false. Hence it is a cogent. Again, let the premises is no policeman is a thief and the conclusion be no thief is a policeman. Let the premises be true, then the conclusion is also seen to be true. If the premises will be true that no policeman is a thief, so after that the conclusion which has been framed or concluded it can also be true. Thus it's a valid deductive argument. Now difference between deductive versus inductive. Deductive method it does not give any new knowledge. Means when the teacher is applying the deductive methods, it's not giving any new knowledge to the learner. It is a method of verification. Means we are verifying the theory or the things that are present before. It is a method of instruction. It is a way of giving instructions to the learner. Child gets ready-made information and make use of it. The child gets the ready-made information from the teacher and he start making use of it. It is a quick process. It encourages dependence on other sources. There is less scope of activity in it. It is a downward process of thought and leads to useful results. Now, inductive method, it's give new information means we will able to get some new knowledge from the inductive method. It is a method of discovery means you will able to discover something new. It is a method of teaching. It's a way of teaching to students. Child acquires first-hand knowledge and information by rote actual observation, and the child is acquiring the first-hand knowledge when the teacher is using the inductive method and information by actual observation. The child is will get the knowledge and information by actual observation. It is a slow process. It trains the mind and gives self-confidence and initiative. It's a full of is an upward process of thought and leads to principles. Induction and deduction are pervasive elements in critical thinking. They are elements that are used in the development of critical thinking among the learner. They are also somewhat misunderstood terms. They are somewhat at their way, whether it's deductive or inductive. Arguments based on experience or observation are best expressed inductively, while arguments based on law or rules are best expressed deductively. Most arguments are mainly inductive, means the approach that we use is inductive. In fact, inductive reasoning usually comes much more naturally to us than deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning moves from specific details and observation to the new general underlying principle or process that explains them. The premises of an inductive argument are believed to support the conclusion, but don't assure it that that conclusion will be supported or not. Thus, the conclusion of an induction is regarded as an hypothesis. The conclusion of induction is regarded as a hypothesis. In the inductive method are also called the scientific method. We also call it as the scientific method in which we have to frame some hypotheses, and on the basis of those hypotheses we collect some data, and on the basis of that data we comes to some conclusion. Observation of nature is the authority. In contrast, deductive reasoning typically move from general truth to specific conclusion. It's open with an expansive explanation and continue with prediction for specific observations supporting it. Deductive reasoning is narrow in nature and it's concerned with testing or confirming a hypothesis. Deductive reasoning leads to confirmation of our original thought theories. Means deductive reasoning lead to the confirmation of our original theories, whether they has to be confirmed or not. It guarantees the correctness of conclusion. Logic is the authority in the deductive method. So today, students, we have learned the concept of inductive deductive reasoning. We have come to know that these can approaches can be used by the teacher in that way to teach the students the specific concepts. For further reading on this topic, you can refer these references. Now let us discuss some MCQs, as MCQs are the best way to learn what are the learning objectives of the student or how much they have learned the particular concept that we have taught them today. Now the first one is and dash approach to teaching. Language starts with examples and asks learner to find rules. Now what is that teaching learning that starts with the presentation of examples by the teacher, and the teacher asks learners to find out the rules on the basis of the examples that has been given by him. Now the options are A. Inductive, B. Deductive, C. Experiment, or it's D. Conclusion. So these are the options, students. Now you have to frame the correct one on the basis of the given choices, and the correct answer will be yes. The correct answer will be option A. That is, it is an inductive approach to teaching learning where we starts with example and ask learner to find the different rules. Now the second one, the dash method of teaching means which method of teaching means that the teacher presents the rules through situations and sentences where the teacher has to present the rules through different situations and sentences. Now the options are A. Inductive, B. Deductive. C. Experiment or HD conclusion. So these are the options and the student has to select the correct one on the basis of the given choices, and the correct answer is option A, that is inductive. Means that teacher, if the teacher is using that particular method of teaching, then he first present the rules through situations and sentences. Now, dash approach that start by giving learner room, then example, then practice. Now, if the teacher is using this approach to teach the learners, then it will start by giving learners some rules. Then, on the basis of the rules, various examples will be presented, and through those examples, they will practice. The first, they will practice the guided practice will be, and then general practice will be given to them. So these are the options: E. Deductive, B. Inductive, C. Assumptions, or it's D. Experiences. Now these are the options, and now students, you have to select the correct one on the basis of the given choices, and the correct answer will be deductive approach. Means we can say that deductive approach starts by giving general laws and then examples, and then the teacher asks the students to practice that concept. Now the fourth one, induction and deduction are pervasive elements in dash thinking. Now, what are induction and deduction, and which type of elements are this in dash thinking? Now the options are A. Critical, whether we are saying that these are the elements of creative thinking is involved. This B1 is analysis, they will analyze the thinking. C is experimenting, and it's D assumption. So these are the options. Now you have to select the correct one on the basis of the given choices, and the correct answer is option A, that is critical. Now, deductive reasoning involved. What deductive reasoning involved? Now the options are reasoning from the particular to the general, where we give reasons from the general from the particular to the general. B. None of the above means no options are correct. C. Generalizing results to the population means the result which we got after the deductive reasoning will be applied to solve the hypothesis. The result which we will get from the hypothesis testing, whether that results can be generalized to the whole population or it cannot be generalized to the whole population. Now, reasoning from general to particular, and the last one is that it's involved reasoning that moves from general to specific. Now, these are the options. Now, you have to select the correct one on the basis of the given choices, and the correct one will be reasoning from the general to the particular. Now, the sixth one, when is deductive reasoning used in research process? When we will use deductive reasoning in the process of research? The first one is in generalizing results of the population, when we have to generalize the results to the whole population, that these are the results and it can be generalized to the population. B. All of the above. See, in developing hypothesis, where we want to develop a particular hypothesis, in developing a theory, when we want to develop a theory, a deductive reasoning will be used in the research process. So the correct answer will be option C, in developing hypothesis. Now the seventh one, dash is common in science. Start thing is common when we are teaching science, where data is collected, where we have to collect a lot of data, and tentative models are developed to describe and predict future behavior. When data will collect, some tentative models will be developed, and on the basis of those tentative models, we will able to develop and describe and predict what can be the future behavior. Now the options are A. Inductive reasoning, B. Deductive reasoning, C. Reasoning, or it's D. Analysis. Yes, the students, these are the choices, and now you have to select the correct one on the basis of the choices, and the correct answer will be option A, that is inductive reasoning. Now the eighth one, dash thus, is inference by reasoning from journal to particular, means where we are going talking about the reason from the journal to the particular, or the process of deducing from something known or assumed, or we come to the deducing process where we are to come from something known or assumed to what. Now the options are A. Deduction, whether it's a deduction technique, B. Inductive, whether it's an inductive technique, C. Complex, it's a complex situation, or it's D. Experiments, means we have to do some experiments to come to the conclusion. Now, what will be the correct answer? Students, these are the choices in front of you, A, B, C, D. Now you have to select the correct one on the basis of the given choices. And what will be the correct answer? Yes, the correct answer will be option A, that is deduction. So deduction thus is inferences from journal to particular, where we are finding out the inferences for the population, and it is done by reasoning, and we move from general to particular, or the process of deducing from something known or assumed. And that process is known as deduction. Now, in a classroom, the teacher conducts lesson by introducing, where the teacher will conduct a lesson by introducing, means that concept that is teacher going to teach will be introduced by the teacher to the class. The teacher conduct lessons by introducing, the teacher teach the students a particular lesson by introducing and explaining concepts to students, and after that they will explain a particular concept to students, and then expected students to complete tasks to practice the concept, and in the end it was expected from the students to complete the tasks which was given to them to practice the concept, means to practice the concept which they have learned. Now the options are A. Deductive, B. Inductive, C. Complex, or it's D. Experiment. So these are the choices, students. Now you have to select the correct one on the basis of the given choices. Now the correct answer will be, yes, students, the correct answer will be deductive. Option A, means in a deductive classroom, when we are a teacher is teaching the students with the deductive approach or the deductive method of teaching, the teacher conducts lesson. The teacher will conduct the lesson by introducing, means where that lesson will be introduced by the teacher and explaining concept to student. He will explain the particular concept to the student, and then expected students to complete tasks to practice the concept, and in the end uh, a task has to be given by the teacher to the student, and they have to complete the task and to practice the concept which they have learned today. Now the 10th one, dash works the other way, that's work the other way in a different way. Moving from specific observation to broader generalization and theory, where we are moving from specific observation, particular observation, to broader generalization means from the specific observation is on the basis of the observation that is very specific. We have to move from specific observation to broader generalization where the generalization can be made and theories and different theories will be developed. Now the options are: A. Inductive reasoning, whether it is an approach that will be used by the teacher is called the inductive reasoning. B. Deductive reasoning, where the deductive reasoning will be used by the teacher. Generalizing, where we are going to generalize a particular concept. Or D. Assumption, you are assuming that these will be the basis for getting the results. So, students, these are the options A, B, C, D in front of you, and now you have to select the correct answer on the basis of the given choices. And the correct answer will be yes, the correct answer will be option A, that is inductive reasoning. So, inductive reasoning works the other way. It is different from the deductive reasoning. Reasoning works in a different way that has been prescribed for a deductive reasoning. Moving from specific observation to broader generalization, in inductive reasoning, we are moving from specific observation that this is the specific observation or observation of that particular situation has been made, and on the basis of those specific observation, we are able to come to broader generalization where generalization can be made to the whole population and theories can be developed. Now, thank you, students. With this particular narration of today's topic, you are able to understand the concept of inductive method. Now, what is the inductive method? And then you will able to understand the concept of deductive method. Now, these are the innovative methods to teach the students, and this method is usually used by the teacher in science, in mathematical teaching, in the teaching of grammar, whether the teacher is teaching grammar in Hindi, English, or Sanskrit. Students always take inductive and deductive method as the same method. They are not the same methods. There are some differences between inductive method and a deductive method. In method, activities are involved, but when we are talking about the deductive method, there is a very limited scope of activities. A new knowledge will be generated by the students when they are using the concept of inductive method. But new information, new knowledge will not be generated or formulated when we are using the deductive method. Further, we have understood that this is a method that has been applied in logic and reasoning. On the basis of that, we will have to frame some hypotheses. On the basis of those hypotheses, we have to test whether the hypothesis will be achieved or not. What are the specific things that has to be keep in mind by the teacher when he is going to teach with the inductive deductive approach? In the end, we have come to the conclusion that inductive and deductive are the best methods to teach the general science. When we are teaching the science, that the deductive method will be used more. When we are teaching mathematics and Indian grammars, that the inductive method will be used. So, in the next lecture, we will discuss about the different approaches and we will talk about the new innovative methods to teach the students. Thank you so much. Thank you, students, for your patience listening.